Jake Miller walked through the long hallway of Nexus Prime Station. His boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The walls around him were covered with strange symbols from different alien worlds. Blue lights ran along the ceiling, giving everything a cold glow. He carried a small wooden box in his hands. Inside was something very important to him and to all humans. Today was the day when all the alien races would show their most precious old things. Jake felt nervous but tried not to show it. The station was huge. It floated in space between 3 different star systems. No one owned it. All the alien races built it together as a place to meet and talk. Jake had never seen anything like it before. The hallways were big enough for creatures twice his size to walk through. As he walked, Jake saw other beings heading to the same place. A tall blue creature with 4 arms glided past him. Its skin looked like it was made of crystal. Behind it came something that looked like a giant insect walking on 2 legs. Its eyes were black and shiny like marbles. Jake reached the main hall. It was enormous. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. Thousands of seats were arranged in circles around a central stage. Most of the seats were already filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some aliens floated in the air like clouds of gas. Others were covered in scales that changed colors as they moved. There were robots with glowing eyes and creatures that looked like walking trees. Jake had studied pictures of all these races, but seeing them in person was different. He found the section marked for humans. There were only 5 other people there. Earth was still new to this group of alien worlds. It only joined 3 years ago. Jake sat down and placed the wooden box carefully on his lap. "Welcome, beings of the galaxy," a voice said. It came from everywhere at once. Jake looked up and saw a ball of bright light floating above the stage. This was Lux, the being who ran these meetings. No one knew what Lux really was. Some said it was pure energy that had learned to think. "Today we gather for the Heritage Exchange," Lux continued. "Each race will show us something from their past. Something that shows who they are and where they came from." Jake watched as the first race took the stage. They were called the Zephyrians. They looked like tall humans, but their skin was blue and they had no hair. One of them walked to the center of the stage carrying a small crystal cube. "This is a memory core," the Zephyrian said. "It holds the thoughts and feelings of our people when we first left our home world and traveled to the stars. Anyone who touches it can experience that moment as if they were there." The crowd made sounds of approval. Many aliens nodded their heads or made clicking noises with their mouths. Jake had to admit it was impressive. Next came the Krolloks. They looked like giant ants, but walked on 2 legs and had 4 arms. Their representative carried what looked like a small metal stick. "This weapon can destroy a mountain," the Krolloks said. "Our ancestors used it to defend our world from space rocks that would have killed us all. One shot from this can turn stone into dust." More sounds of approval from the crowd. Jake felt his stomach tighten. How could his old gun compare to something that could destroy mountains? The Vorthok came next. They were the insect-like creatures Jake had seen in the hallway. Their gift was stranger than the others. It looked like a living plant, but parts of it were made of metal and glass. "This is our first biomachine," the Vorthok explained. "It can think like an animal, but work like a computer." It was the beginning of our technology that mixes life with machines. One by one, each alien race showed their treasures. The Draconians brought armor that could stop any weapon. Ethereals showed a device that could read minds. The Quantum Builders displayed a tool that could change the laws of physics in a small area. Each gift was more amazing than the last. Jake looked down at his wooden box. Inside was a gun that was almost 150 years old. It used gunpowder to shoot pieces of metal. Compared to weapons that could destroy mountains or armor that could stop anything, it seemed like a joke. "And now," Lux announced, "we welcome our newest members, the humans of Earth." Jake stood up. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to walk to the stage. The lights were bright and hot. He could feel thousands of alien eyes watching him. Some were curious. Others looked bored. He placed the wooden box on a table in the center of the stage. Slowly he opened it. Inside, sitting on red cloth, was the gun. It was a Colt .45 revolver. The metal was dark with age but still shiny. The wooden handle was smooth from years of use. There were decorations carved into the metal that his great-great-grandfather had put there. Jake picked up the gun carefully. "This belonged to my great-great-grandfather," he said. His voice echoed in the huge room. He was a lawman in the American Old West. He used this gun to keep peace in his town. It shoots lead bullets using gunpowder. Bullets travel about 1,000 feet per second. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then the laughter started. It began with a few small sounds. Then it grew louder. Soon most of the aliens in the room were making noises that Jake understood were laughter. Some races clicked their teeth. Others made high whistling sounds. Gas creatures flashed different colors rapidly. "Is this a joke?" asked a voice from the crowd. Jake saw it came from a draconian. They looked like giant lizards that walked on two legs. This one was covered in natural armor that looked like dragon scales. "A chemical propulsion system," said a Krolix. "Our children make better weapons in school." "The range is pathetic," added a Zephyrian. "Our hand weapons can hit targets on the other side of a planet." Jake felt his face turn red. He'd expected this reaction, but it still hurt. He looked down at the gun in his hands. His great-great-grandfather had carried this same weapon through dangerous times. It had saved his life more than once. "The craftsmanship is quaint," said the ethereal representative. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "It's very primitive, but it has a certain historical charm." The laughter continued. Jake carefully placed the gun back in its box. He had done what he came to do. He had shown them something important from human history. It did not matter that they did not understand. As he walked back to his seat, Jake heard aliens talking to each other. They used words like backward and simple and cute. Some of them sounded like they felt sorry for humans. Others seemed to think it was funny that such a primitive race had been allowed to join the galactic community. Jake sat down and closed the wooden box. He knew the gun was more than just an old weapon. It represented something important about humans. It showed that they could make things that lasted. It showed that they could solve problems with simple tools and smart thinking. But the aliens did not see that. They only saw old metal and gunpowder. They saw something that was slow and weak compared to their amazing technology. The ceremony continued with speeches about friendship between the races. Jake barely listened. He was thinking about his great-great-grandfather and all the humans who had used simple tools to do great things. He had no idea that in just a few days he would have a chance to show these laughing aliens exactly what that simple old gun could do. 3 days passed after the Heritage Exchange. Jake spent most of his time in the human quarters of Nexus Prime Station. He read reports from Earth and tried to forget the laughter from the ceremony. The other human diplomats were kind to him, but he could see the disappointment in their eyes. On the third morning, Jake was drinking coffee in the dining area when the station's warning lights began to flash. A loud voice filled the air. "All beings report to emergency stations. Unknown fleet approaching Nexus Prime." Jake looked out the large window that showed space around the station. In the distance, he could see dark shapes moving toward them. The shapes grew larger as they came closer. Soon he could make out the details of massive warships. The ships were black and covered with sharp points. They looked like giant metal monsters floating through space. Jake recognized them from his studies of alien races. These were draconian war vessels. Other aliens in the dining area were talking in worried voices. Some were already leaving to go to safe areas of the station. Jake stayed by the window and watched the fleet get closer. An hour later, all the diplomats were called to the main hall. Jake took his seat in the human section. The hall was full, but much quieter than during the Heritage Exchange. Everyone seemed nervous. The ball of light that was Lux appeared above the stage. "Citizens of the galaxy," it said. "We have received a message from the approaching Draconian fleet. Admiral Korath wishes to address the council." A section of the wall became transparent. Through it, Jake could see a huge Draconian on the bridge of his warship. Admiral Korath was even bigger than the Draconians Jake had seen before. His scales were dark red and covered with scars. His eyes were yellow and cold. Beings of the so-called Galactic Council, Admiral Koroth said. His voice was deep and harsh. The Draconian Empire has grown tired of pretending you are our equals. We have conquered the Outer Rim worlds. We have crushed the rebels of Sector 7. Now we demand what is ours by right. Murmurs of fear filled the hall. Jake felt his heart beating faster. We will provide tribute to the Empire, Koroth continued. Food, fuel, metals, and technology. Those who refuse will be taken by force. You have 1 day to decide. The wall went dark. For a moment, no one spoke. Then everyone started talking at once. Voices rose in panic and anger. Lux's light grew brighter to get attention. The council will meet to discuss this demand, it announced. All races are invited to speak. Jake watched as representatives from different alien races stood up to talk. Most wanted to negotiate. Some suggested paying the tribute to avoid war. A few brave ones talked about fighting back. The Krolix representative clicked his mandibles angrily. The Draconians think they can bully us because they have big ships. But we have weapons too. The Zephyrian diplomat shook her blue head. Their fleet is too strong. We should find a peaceful solution. The arguments went on for hours. Jake listened but said nothing. Earth was too new and weak to have much say in galactic politics. Finally, Lux spoke again. The Draconian Empire has invoked the ancient right of challenge. According to old galactic law, this gives them the right to demand combat trials. Jake had read about this law in his studies. It was very old, from the time when the galaxy was more violent. It said that disputes could be settled by single combat between champions. If they invoke this right, Lux continued, we cannot refuse. Each member race must choose a champion to face Draconian warriors. The winners will determine the outcome of this conflict. The hall erupted in worried voices again. Single combat was dangerous, but it was better than a full war that would destroy worlds. Over the next few hours, each race chose their champion. The Krolix selected their strongest bio-enhanced warrior. Zephyrians picked their master of quantum blade fighting. Vorthok chose a cybernetically enhanced soldier with metal parts replacing half his body. Each champion was impressive. They carried weapons worth more than entire cities. Their armor could stop almost any attack. They had been trained from birth to fight. When it came time for humans to choose, Jake stood up. I volunteer to be Earth's champion, he said. Some aliens made sounds that Jake thought might be laughter. Others seemed confused. A few looked worried for him. Are you certain, Jake Miller of Earth? Lux asked. The Draconian warriors are very dangerous. Many champions have died in these trials. Jake nodded. I am certain. The other human diplomats tried to talk him out of it. They said he should let someone else fight. He said Earth should forfeit rather than risk his life. Jake had made up his mind. What weapon will you choose? Asked the Krolix representative. We can lend you one of our plasma rifles. The Zephyrian diplomat offered an energy sword. This blade can cut through any armor, she said. Jake thanked them but shook his head, walked to his wooden box. Sat near his chair, he opened it and took out the old Colt .45 revolver. The hall went silent. Then the laughter started again, even louder than before. Is he serious? Asked a draconian voice from the crowd. He cannot be, said an ethereal. No one would choose such a primitive weapon for combat. Jake held the gun firmly in his hand. It felt solid and familiar. His grandfather had taught him to shoot with guns like this when he was young. He knew every part of it. He knew exactly how it worked. Admiral Koroth's image appeared on the wall again. When he saw Jake holding the revolver, his scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. The human amuses me, Koroth said. I will personally face this brave fool. It will be entertaining to show the galaxy how pathetic the newest race really is. More laughter filled the hall. Jake heard words like suicide and madness and poor little human. But Jake was not listening to the laughter anymore. He was thinking about his great-great-grandfather. That man had faced dangerous outlaws with this same gun. He had protected innocent people and kept the peace in a wild frontier town. The gun had never failed him. It was simple, but it worked. It did not need computer chips or energy cells or quantum processors. It just needed gunpowder, lead, and someone who knew how to use it. Jake looked up at Admiral Korath's image. The big Draconian was still smiling, showing rows of sharp teeth. "When do we fight?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow at dawn by station time," Korath replied. "Look forward to teaching you about real power, little human." As the meeting ended and aliens began to leave, Jake stayed in his seat. He opened the cylinder of the revolver and checked the bullets. 6 shots. That was all he would have around him. Other champions were testing their advanced weapons and checking their high-tech armor. They had energy shields and targeting computers and weapons that could fire thousands of times. Jake had 6 bullets and a gun that was almost 150 years old. But as he sat there holding the revolver, Jake remembered something. His grandfather had told him long ago, "It's not the weapon that wins the fight, boy. It is the person holding it." Tomorrow, he would find out if his grandfather was right. Jake did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about the fight that would come in the morning. He cleaned his gun 3 times and checked his bullets over and over. Each bullet was perfect, but he only had 6 of them. At dawn, Jake walked to the arena. Other beings filled the hallways, all heading to watch the combat trials. Many stopped to stare at him. Some pointed and whispered to their friends. Jake heard the word human spoken in many different alien languages. The arena was huge. It was shaped like a bowl with seats going up all around the sides. In the center was a large flat area where the fighting would happen. Jake had never seen so many aliens in one place. The seats were packed. Creatures floated in the air above the crowd. Giant screens showed close-up views for those too far away to see clearly. Jake walked down to the fighting area. Other champions were already there, testing their weapons and armor. The Krolix warrior fired his plasma rifle at a practice target. The metal target melted like ice in the sun. The Zephyrian champion swung her energy sword, cutting through thick steel like it was paper. Jake found a quiet corner and sat down. He took out his revolver and opened the cylinder. 6 bullets looked back at him. He closed it again and put the gun in his holster. "Are you ready, human?" asked a voice behind him. Jake turned around. It was the Vorthok champion. Half of his body was metal and machines. His left arm had been replaced with something that looked like a weapon. Red lights glowed where his eyes should be. "I am ready," Jake said. The cyborg warrior tilted his head. "Your weapon is very old. Are you sure it will work?" Jake patted the gun in his holster. "It has worked for 150 years. I think it will work today." The cyborg made a sound that might have been laughter. "I hope you prove me wrong." "About humans," he said. "But do not get your hopes up." A loud horn sounded. All the champions looked toward the center of the arena. Lux appeared as a ball of bright light above them. "Citizens of the galaxy," Lux announced, "the trials will now begin. First to fight will be the Krolix champion against Draconian captain Vexthul." Jake watched as the 2 fighters took their positions. The Krolix warrior was 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black stone. Its weapon could fire bolts of pure energy. Captain Vexthul was even bigger. His scales were green and yellow. He carried a sword that crackled. With electricity and a shield that could stop almost any attack, the fight was fast and brutal. The Krolix warrior fired his plasma rifle again and again. Each shot would have destroyed a building, but the Draconian's shield absorbed the energy. When the rifle ran out of power, Vexthul charged forward with his electric sword. The fight was over in minutes. The Krolix champion lay on the ground, defeated but alive. The crowd of Draconians in the stands roared with approval. Next came the Zephyrian champion against another Draconian warrior. The blue-skinned alien was fast, and her energy sword was deadly, but it was not enough. The Draconian's armor was too strong and his weapons too powerful. One by one, the other champions fought and lost. The Vorthok cyborg lasted longer than the others, his metal parts protecting him from damage. But even he could not win against Draconian strength and skill. Finally, it was Jake's turn. "And now," Lux announced, "the human champion Jake Miller will face Admiral Korath himself." The crowd's noise grew louder. Jake could hear laughter mixed with the other sounds. He walked to the center of the arena. His legs felt steady, which surprised him. Admiral Korath entered from the opposite side. He was massive, at least 8 feet tall, and covered in thick red scales. Scars covered his arms and chest, proof of many battles. His armor was black metal that seemed to eat light. In his hands he carried a weapon that looked like a rifle, but glowed with internal energy. "So little human," Korath said as they faced each other. "Are you ready to die for your pathetic species?" Jake looked up at the giant alien. "I am ready." "To fight for my people," he said. Korath laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your people chose poorly. That ancient toy cannot hurt me." Jake said nothing. He moved his hand closer to his holster, but did not draw the gun yet. Lux's voice filled the arena. The combat area will now be configured for Earth-standard gravity and terrain. The floor of the arena began to change. Rocks and hills appeared. Metal barriers rose from the ground. Small buildings and walls were created for cover. Soon the flat arena looked like a small battlefield with many places to hide combatants. "Prepare," Lux announced. Jake drew his revolver. The weight of it felt good in his hand. Around the arena, thousands of aliens watched and waited. Many were making betting sounds about how quickly the human would lose. Korath raised his weapon. It was a molecular disruptor, Jake realized. It could tear apart anything it hit at the level of atoms. One shot would turn him into dust. "Combat may begin," Lux declared. Korath immediately fired his weapon. A beam of purple energy shot toward Jake. Jake had already started moving, rolling behind a rock barrier. The beam hit where he had been standing and left a hole in the ground. The crowd cheered. They thought the fight would be over quickly. Jake stayed behind the rock as more energy beams hit around him. Each shot from Korath's weapon made the ground shake. The air smelled like burning metal. "Stop hiding, coward," Korath shouted. "Face me like a warrior." Jake did not answer, was listening and learning. Each time Korath fired his weapon, there was a brief pause before he could fire again. The weapon was powerful, but it needed time to recharge between shots. Jake moved from rock to rock, always staying ahead of the energy beams. The crowd began to sound bored. Some aliens were laughing at what they thought was Jake's cowardice. But Jake was not running from fear. He was learning his enemy's pattern. His grandfather had taught him that every fighter has a rhythm. Find the rhythm, and you can find the weakness. For 10 minutes, Jake dodged and hid, while Korath fired shot after shot. The Draconian was getting angry. His shots became less careful and more wild. "Stand and fight," Korath roared, "or I will hunt you down like an animal." Now Jake crouched behind a metal wall. He could hear Korath's heavy footsteps getting closer. The alien was tired of the long-range fight. He wanted to end it with his claws and teeth. Jake counted the seconds since the last energy blast. He knew exactly how long it took for the weapon to recharge. He knew Korath would be confident that the human was trapped and helpless. He was about to show the galaxy that humans were neither trapped nor helpless. Jake took a deep breath and prepared to step out from behind the wall. In his hand, the old Colt .45 waited patiently. It had been waiting for 150 years for this moment. The time had come to see what the ancient human gun could really do. Jake counted in his head. 1, 2, 3. He knew exactly how long. Admiral Korath's weapon took to charge between shots. 4, 5, 6. The big Draconian was getting closer, his heavy feet shaking the ground. 7, 8, 9. Jake had been hiding and running for 15 minutes. The crowd was getting restless. Some aliens were leaving their seats, bored by what they saw as a one-sided chase. Others were laughing and making jokes about the cowardly human, but Jake was not being a coward. He was being smart. His grandfather had taught him that in a gunfight, the first rule was to stay alive long enough to take your shot. The second rule was to make that shot count. 10, 11, 12. Korath's weapon fired again. The purple energy beam hit the metal, while Jake was hiding behind. The wall glowed red-hot and began to melt. Jake rolled away just as the metal collapsed. "You cannot hide forever, little human," Korath shouted. His voice was full of anger now. "When I catch you, I'll make your death slow and painful." Jake found another piece of cover. His breathing was calm and steady. Around him, the arena. The floor was covered with melted metal and burned rocks. Koreth's weapon had destroyed half the battlefield trying to hit him. The Draconian Admiral was getting sloppy. His shots were wild now, powered by rage instead of skill. Each miss made him angrier, and anger made him careless. Jake peeked around his cover. Koreth was about 50 feet away, walking toward him with his weapon ready. The alien's yellow eyes were full of fury. His mouth was open, showing sharp teeth. This was the moment Jake had been waiting for. He started counting again. 1, 2, 3. Koreth raised his weapon and fired another energy beam. It missed Jake by inches, turning the rock next to him into glass. 4, 5, 6. The weapon was recharging. Koreth could not fire again for several more seconds. 7, 8, 9. Jake stepped out from behind his cover. The crowd gasped. After hiding for so long, the human was finally showing himself. Many aliens leaned forward in their seats, expecting to see the end of the fight. Koreth saw Jake and smiled with all his sharp teeth. "Finally," he growled, "ready to die like a warrior?" The Draconian started to raise his weapon, but it was still charging. Jake could see the energy building inside it, glowing brighter and brighter. 10, 11, 12. Jake raised his revolver. The gun felt perfectly balanced in his hand. His arm was steady. His breathing was calm. He had done this thousands of times. During practice with his grandfather, Koreth realized his weapon was not ready to fire. For just a moment, surprise showed on his scarred face. In all his battles, no enemy had ever timed his weapon's recharge cycle so perfectly. 13, 14. Jake aimed at the center of Koreth's chest. The Draconian was wearing armor, but Jake could see gaps where the metal plates joined together. His great-great-grandfather had always told him to aim for center mass, the biggest target. The arena became quiet. Even the aliens who had been laughing stopped making noise. Everyone could see that something important was about to happen. 15. Jake squeezed the trigger. The sound of the gunshot was like thunder in the arena. It was different from all the high-tech weapons the other champions had used. There was no clean hum of energy or sophisticated electronic whine. This was the raw, violent crack of gunpowder exploding in a metal tube. The sound echoed off the arena walls again and again. In the silence that followed, Jake could hear his own heartbeat. The bullet flew across the arena faster than the eye could follow. It was just a piece of lead, shaped by human hands in a factory on Earth over a century. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech. Just metal moving very fast. Koreth's energy shields activated automatically when they detected incoming fire. They were designed to stop plasma bolts and laser beams and particle weapons. The shields could deflect attacks that moved at the speed of light. But they were not designed to stop a simple piece of metal. The bullet passed through the energy shields like they were not there. The shields flickered and sparked. Confused by something so primitive they had no programming to handle it. The bullet hit Koreth's armor. The armor was made of advanced alloys that could withstand energy weapons in acid and extreme heat. It was not designed to stop kinetic impact from dense metal moving at high speed. The bullet punched through the armor with a sound, like breaking glass. Koreth looked down at his chest. A small hole had appeared in his armor right above his heart. Dark blood was starting to seep out around the edges. For a moment, the mighty Draconian Admiral just stood there. His yellow eyes were wide with shock, his mouth hung open. The weapon in his hands suddenly felt very heavy. "Possible," he whispered. Then his legs gave out and he fell to his knees. The molecular disruptor slipped from his hands and clattered. On the arena floor, Jake kept his gun pointed at Koreth, but did not fire again. The Draconian was badly hurt, but still alive. Jake had aimed carefully to wound, not to kill. The arena was completely silent. Thousands of aliens sat frozen in their seats, staring at the scene below. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even seemed to breathe. Admiral Koreth, the feared conqueror of star systems. had been brought down by a weapon that was older than some civilizations. Jake walked slowly toward the fallen Draconian. His gun was still ready, but Korath was not fighting anymore. The alien was pressing his hands against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. "How?" Korath asked. His voice was weak now, very different from the roar he had used before. Jake stopped a few feet away. "Sometimes the old ways work best," he said. He looked up at the thousands of watching aliens. They were all staring at him with new eyes. The laughter was gone. The jokes were finished. For the first time since humans had joined the galactic community, the other races were looking at them with something that might have been respect. Jake holstered his revolver. The fight was over. In the crowd, he could see the other alien champions who had lost their battles. They were looking at his simple gun with new understanding. The Vorthok cyborg nodded slowly. The Krolix warrior clicked his mandibles in what Jake thought might be approval. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to help Korath. Jake stepped back to give them room. The Draconian would live. But he would never forget the day a human with an ancient gun had shown him that advanced technology was not always better than simple effectiveness. As the medical teams worked, Jake looked down at his revolver. Bullets left. He hoped he would not need them, but if he did, he knew they would be ready. It's just like they had been ready for the last 150 years. The medical teams carried Admiral Korath away on a floating stretcher. The big Draconian was unconscious but breathing. Dark blood stained his armor where the bullet had punched through. Jake watched them go and felt relieved that he had not killed anyone. The arena was still quiet. Thousands of aliens sat in their seats, but no one was talking. They all stared at Jake like they were seeing him for the first time. The human with the ancient gun had done something none of them thought was possible. Lux appeared above the arena as a bright ball of light. "The combat trials are concluded," it announced. "The human champion has defeated Admiral Korath. According to galactic law, the Draconian demand for tribute is denied." A few aliens began to clap. Then more joined in. Soon, the whole arena was filled with sounds of approval. Different races made different noises, but they all meant the same thing. "Hey, we're cheering for Jake." Jake walked toward the exit of the arena. As he passed the other alien champions, each one nodded to him with respect. The Krolix warrior clicked his mandibles in greeting. The Zephyrian champion bowed her blue head. The Vorthok cyborg's red eyes flashed in what Jake thought was approval. Outside the arena, crowds of aliens waited for Jake. They moved aside to let him pass. But many reached out to touch his arm or shoulder as he walked by. Some spoke to him in languages he did not understand, but their tone was friendly. Jake made it back to the human quarters where the other Earth's diplomats were waiting. They surrounded him with excited voices and happy faces. "That was amazing," said Susan Clark, the lead diplomat. "I've never seen anything like it." "The whole galaxy is talking about what you did," added Tom Brady, the military advisor. "Every news station is broadcasting the story." Jake sat down heavily in a chair. He was more tired than he had expected. The fight had lasted only a few minutes, but the tension had been exhausting. A few hours later, Jake received his first visitor. It was High Counselor Zexai of the Krolix. The giant ant-like creature had to bend down to fit through the human-sized doorway. "I have come to apologize," Zexai said. His voice sounded like grinding metal. "We laughed at your weapon. We were wrong." Jake invited the alien to sit down. "Your weapon was impressive too," Jake said. "That plasma rifle could have destroyed buildings." Zexa shook his large head. "But it did not work when I needed it most. Your simple gun worked perfectly. Sometimes the best solution is not the most complicated one." Over the next few hours, more aliens came to visit. The ethereal representative floated into the room like a cloud of sparkling gas. The Vorthok champion arrived with half his body still showing damage from his fight. Each visitor asked the same question. How had such an old weapon defeated advanced draconian technology? Jake explained it the same way each time. The gun was reliable because it was simple. It had no computer chips to break or energy cells to run out of power. It worked the same way today as it had 150 years ago. "But your shields," said the ethereal. How did you know they would not stop the bullet? Hey. Jake had thought about this during the fight. Energy shields stop energy weapons, he said. But a bullet is not energy. It is just matter moving fast. The shields did not know how to handle something so basic. The next day, Jake received a message from Admiral Korath himself. The Draconian was in the station's medical center, recovering from his wound. I would like to speak with you, the message said. If you are willing, Jake went to the medical center. He found Korath sitting up in a bed that was much too small for his large body. Bandages covered his chest where the bullet had hit. Human, Jake Miller, Korath said when he saw him. You have taught me something important. Jake sat in a chair next to the bed. What is that? That strength is not always about having the biggest weapon or the most advanced technology, Korath replied. Sometimes it is about understanding your enemy and using what you have in the smartest way. The Draconian looked down at his bandaged chest. This bullet hole will remind me of that lesson for the rest of my life. I'm sorry I had to hurt you, Jake said. But you were threatening innocent people. Korath made a sound that might have been laughter. Do not apologize for winning, human. In my culture, we respect strength. You have shown me that humans are stronger than I thought. When Jake returned to the human quarters, he found more visitors waiting. These were representatives from alien governments and military organizations. Wanted to talk about human weapons and tactics. A general from the Zephyrian fleet wanted to know if humans had more weapons like the revolver. A scientist from the Quantum Builders asked about human military history. Even the peaceful ethereals wanted to understand how such a simple tool could be so effective. Jake answered their questions as best he could. He told them about human wars and the weapons that had been used. He explained how humans had always found ways to fight with whatever tools they had available. We do not always have the best technology, Jake said, but we learn to use what we have very well. Over the following weeks, everything changed for humanity in the galaxy. Other races began requesting cultural exchanges with Earth. They wanted to study human history and learn about human methods of solving problems. The Krolix invited human engineers to help design new weapons that combined alien technology with human reliability. The Zephyrians asked human tacticians to teach their military officers about strategy and timing. Even the Draconians, after Admiral Korath recovered, began showing new respect for human capabilities. They withdrew their demands for tribute and offered trade agreements instead. Jake found himself appointed as Earth's new military liaison to the Galactic Council. His first job was to work with alien scientists who wanted to understand why simple kinetic weapons could be more effective than energy weapons in certain situations. On his last day at Nexus Prime, Jake went to look at the Heritage Exchange display one more time. His great-great-grandfather's Colt .45 sat in its place of honor, but now it was surrounded by interested aliens reading about its history. A young Krolix student was studying the gun carefully. "Excuse me," she said when she saw Jake. "Are you the human who used this weapon?" "I am," Jake replied. "Could you teach me how it works?" she asked. "I want to understand human engineering." Jake smiled. "I would be happy to." As he began explaining the simple mechanics of gunpowder and bullets to the eager alien student, Jake thought about how much had changed. A few weeks ago, the galaxy had laughed at human technology. Now they wanted to learn from it. His great-great-grandfather would have been proud. The old lawman had carried that gun to protect people and keep the peace. Now, more than a century later, it was still doing the same job on a galactic scale. Sometimes, Jake thought, the old ways really were the best ways. But sometimes the simplest solution was the one that worked when everything else failed. The ancient human gun had spoken, and the galaxy had finally learned to listen.